Colorado gets a big reality check at the hands of the Oregon Ducks in Week 4, and they aren't the only ones dealing with the harsh realities of college football.
You are Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12 reaction version. I am your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view post-college football viewing. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with our media rights and soon to be mostly team-free. But until then, beloved and loaded Conference of Champions. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, review wherever you listen to or watch the show, which is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. So, Colorado, Washington State, Oregon State, takeaways there. How about those Cougs? Are you ready to hear the statement, Pac-12 contender Washington State? Are you ready to hear that? No, you're probably not, so I'll say it later in the show. Colorado, oh boy, that was... I wonder how the Buffs fans who have been so passionately supportive of that program over the last several weeks as the college football season has unfolded, I wonder how they're feeling right now. I'm going to go on a limb and say not great. I don't think they are on their moral high horse about people not believing in Coach Prime. But the fact of the matter is this was very, very simple. Colorado is the same football team that beat TCU. They're the same football team that beat Nebraska while playing ugly in the first half. They're the same football team that should have lost to Colorado State. The Buffs got a reality check on Saturday against the Ducks in Eugene. Yes, I am an Oregon fan. However, I can still look at matters objectively and understand that this is what it actually is. This is the reality of the situation. Colorado is still a team that is going to make a bowl game this year. They are better than a number of teams on their schedule. We have not seen them play a really good team at home. Maybe it'll be better, but goodness gracious, was that ever ugly. Shedeur Sanders didn't hit 200 yards passing. They didn't hit 200 yards of offense. They're down 35-0 at the break. The defense had nothing. You're telling me without Travis Hunter, the defense can't do anything like that? That's kind of what we thought. Like, all the thoughts I had about Colorado going into the Oregon game, I still think. The Colorado offense fizzling out in Eugene, I thought was more about the Ducks defense than it was Colorado's offense, because I've still seen the Buffs produce at a high level for 3 weeks, twice against Power 5 opponents, once against a G5. They haven't played an FCS opponent this year. So when you look at those numbers, they've gone up in against as tough of a schedule as anyone can make going into a season. Are Nebraska and TCU great teams? No. I think TCU's fine, though. TCU's probably going to be a 7, 8, maybe 9-win team in the Big 12. Colorado went in and beat them because TCU's got no defense. Guess what? Oregon's got a defense, and it played really, really well, and the Buffs did not. And the Buffs got derailed, and the Buffs hype train has certainly slowed its roll. They're still getting big noon next Saturday against USC. That's not changing. But everything that we've seen with Colorado, nothing has changed. It's the same football team. They had a bad week against a good team. And it was a harsh reminder for Buffs fans and all the Colorado fanboys out there who love to let me know how much of a non-believer I am in the Buffs, picking them to lose week after week. They are better than I thought. Yes, they are still better than I thought. I still think they can be a 6 to 8 win team. 7 might be the most likely, but 8 is not impossible. It's pretty tough, but it's not impossible. That's the ceiling. That's still in play. But Colorado is not ready to be a Pac-12 contender. That much was obvious. Portland State scored on their first drive at Autzen Stadium this year. Colorado didn't score in the first half. They did not score until Oregon took their starters out of the game. It was completely and utterly one-sided in all 3 phases. And yes, Colorado is a better defense when Travis Hunter's on the field. Holy smokes, do they have a lot of room to grow. There was nothing there. They couldn't run the football. They couldn't stop the run. They couldn't defend the pass. There was nothing they had going for them. And guess what? They haven't really been able to do any of those things in any of the first 3 games. The matchups have just favored them such that the offense has been able to go out and score enough points to win. If Colorado State had an aggressive head coach or a halfway decent defense, the Rams would have won in Boulder last week. But guess what? They didn't, and the Buffs deserve credit for that. But now you played a team that's ready to win at a Pac-12 championship sort of level. A team like Oregon, or if you play USC next week, they're not going to make a whole heck of a lot of stops. Now, as I'm recording the show, USC's offense is not as dominant as I thought. I'm actively considering cutting off the Pac-12 prime picks in fear that someone might bet money on picks that I give out here on the show. However, that aside, Colorado is not a Pac-12 contender. They just aren't. But I didn't learn anything new about the Buffs. I learned something new about Oregon and what their defense is capable of doing. Are they going to do that against USC and Washington? No, I don't think so. But is that something that the defense had in their back pocket as a capability in 2022? Nope, it definitely was not. Cover the Ducks every day. That was not available to the defense from a capability standpoint in 2022. But I learned nothing new about Colorado except that they're capable of bottoming out. And that's what they did. They played a bad football game against a good team. And Oregon was motivated to punch them in the mouth, and they did. And Colorado's offensive line, it wasn't good. It got dominated. Yeah, they haven't been good all season long. Shedeur Sanders being sacked all the time. I don't think that game was even on Shedeur Sanders or even close to it. Receivers couldn't separate because Oregon's secondary played very well. And the offensive line couldn't hold up in pass protection. Well, guess what? I knew your receiving core wasn't as good without Travis Hunter. I knew your offensive line wasn't good. I knew you couldn't run the football. Alt McCaskill coming back, it didn't matter. It had 5 carries for 17 yards because the offensive line isn't good enough. All you Colorado fanboys out there, oh man, you just don't believe. Every time I ask the question, hey, is Shedeur Sanders going to be able to make an adjustment at the P5? Answer, yeah, he is. Okay, question answered. Here's another question I have. What are you going to be in the trenches? Because I don't see a big influx of offensive line talent or defensive line talent. Are you going to be able to? Yeah, no. Over 6 yards a carry. Again, defensively for the Buffs. 7 sacks allowed of Shedeur Sanders in this football game. They didn't even get 200 yards of total offense. So I didn't learn anything new for the Buffs. The ones who blindly believed, at some level, that Colorado was ready to leap into the Pac-12 contender category after going 1-11 last year because they brought in a whole bunch of talent and won a couple of close football games, those are the people who have gotten a reality check. Because that's what today was. It was a check on reality. And everyone, I think, collectively, across the country, I think is about to kind of pump the brakes on the Coach Prime and Colorado hype train. Because great football teams don't lose 42-6. Oregon is a good team. Oregon looked really, really good. There are a lot of other really good teams in the Pac-12. And Colorado is not going to be able to beat them either. Because they won't be able to compete in the trenches. Guess what? If they play, I don't think they play Washington this year. They play Washington State instead. But guess what? Washington State, who we have to talk about on today's show, a reaction episode of Locked On Pac-12, of course, they've got a couple of great defensive linemen. If you can't pass block for Shedeur Sanders, it doesn't matter how talented he is. Shedeur is not any less talented. He's not suddenly a bum at quarterback. His offensive line got mauled, and his receivers weren't able to separate against a good secondary. That's what happened. And that's what's going to happen when they face good teams. Now, when they face the Stanfords and Arizona States in the world, yeah, I'm going to pick Colorado to win those games because they have more talent in certain areas, and those teams are not ready to capitalize on the advantage they'd have talent-wise on the roster. But Oregon was, the coaching staff was, and Coach Prime and company, they got a reality check. Oregon State got one as well. Oregon State reminds me of one of my really, really good friends. Not my friends at LinkedIn, but they are always on my mind, of course, because these days every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free, which is pretty neat. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. You ever go to the store and just forget something? You're like, oh man, I wish someone could just bring it to my door. Well, DoorDash has that now. If you're missing syrup for your pancakes, ran out of your favorite coffee creamer, forgot the butter, which I did last time I went to the store, DoorDash Grocery is there for you. You've trusted DoorDash to deliver your restaurant favorites, and now you can get grocery deliveries that actually delivers as well. With thousands of grocery stores to choose from, you'll find the best in your neighborhood and boost your local economy with each and every order. Get 50% off your first DoorDash order, up to a $20 value when you use code LOCKEDONCollege at checkout. Limited time offer, terms apply. That's 50% off, up to $20, no minimum subtotal, and zero delivery fees on your first order. When you download the DoorDash app in the App Store and enter code LOCKEDONCollege, don't forget, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for 50% off your first order with DoorDash. I wonder how many Colorado fans will call me a hater and a non-believer after their team lost 40-6. I'm excited to see. So, I have this friend. His name's Montana. There's a very low probability he's listening to or watching the show. I would say this anyway, even if he were, because we're good enough friends to where I could talk about him on the show, and he'd be like, oh, that's kind of cool. Or frankly, he wouldn't care. He's not a huge sports guy. So when we were in middle school, my dad pointed this out to me many years ago. He said, it's really funny that you and Montana are such good friends, because we are. He's one of my closest friends. When we were in middle school, Montana and I despised one another. We had kind of a scuffle at recess one day on the soccer field, and you don't need all the details. But anyway, we didn't like each other. Did not care for one another. And that guy, I was like, I don't want to see that guy. I was over it. Anyway, fast forward to high school, and our friend circles start to intersect through my other good buddy, Colin. And then Montana was there, and we became friends, and we'd kind of forgotten about everything that had happened in middle school. And we looked at the situation, and actually we didn't, because we're guys. We don't really talk about those sorts of things. And we are really good friends to this day. I'd consider him among my closest friends. If I were to get married, that's not imminent, but if I were to get married, he would be in my wedding. Not at my wedding, he would be in my wedding. So I bring this up in reference to DJ Uiagalelei, because if there ever came a time where for some reason I was brought face to face with middle school Montana, I would say, I don't want to see that guy again. I already know that I don't like him, but I like new Montana because clearly this whole situation's able to work. So that's DJ Uiagalelei today for Oregon State, because when he came over to the Beavs, the thinking by many, myself included, and based on the evidence we'd seen early in the year, was, hey, you give DJU a system where he's not asked to do as much, where he is not having the offense run through him. You give him a great offensive line. Sure, he doesn't have a top 10 pick at receiver, but he's got a couple of good solid weapons. He's got a great running game around him, good offensive staff. He can be a new version of himself, much like I decided to view Montana as a new version of himself, and he became one of my good and very close friends and will be for a long time. Middle school Montana, or Clemson DJ Uiagalelei, whichever you prefer, reared its head on Saturday evening in Pullman, Washington. I'll talk about the Cougs in a moment. But DJ Uiagalelei, 17 of 34, yikes. 198 yards, a touchdown and a pick. He ran for one. He carried the ball 9 times for 61 yards. That was Clemson DJ Uiagalelei. And Oregon State brought him in to be Oregon State DJU, the guy we saw in the first couple of weeks of the season. But he struggled last week against San Diego State a little bit, and you thought, well, maybe it's just an off game, people getting some film on him and such. Completed 50% of his passes. I thought Oregon State would win the game. I like their ground game more than Washington State's. I also overestimated the Oregon State defense and underestimated Cam Ward. But my biggest question going into this game, if you go back and listen to Friday's show, was Jake Dickert against DJ Uiagalelei. What is he able to do? Is this going to be the new DJ or the old DJ? Answer, old DJ. And that resulted in the Oregon State offense not being able to keep up with the torrid pace of scoring, another thing I did not expect, from Washington State in this football game. The final score was 38-35. The Cougars prevail. I'll get to them in just a moment. But that game was not as close as the final score indicated. Not even close. It was 38-21 with 9:12 to play. I have sung the praises of Trent Bray, Oregon State's defensive coordinator, and rightfully so. I have also sung the praises of Jake Dickert. The latter is having the better night tonight because Trent Bray watched Cam Ward go for over 400 yards and 4 touchdowns and no interceptions. And my question for Washington State offensively, which they answered, was can they run the ball enough to keep the Beavers off balance? And they did. 3.5 yards a carry, that's all they needed. Didn't need to be great, but they did enough. And Cam Ward was special. Also, special shout out to Washington State wide receiver Josh Kelly, who made some of the most ridiculous catches in this football game. I gasped audibly at the left-handed, one-handed snare that he brought in with a Beaver defender draped all over him. That was only like the first quarter when Washington State came out guns blazing. I'll get to more takeaways for Oregon State and such on Monday, but can we talk about the Washington State Cougars? Are you ready? Like, are you mentally prepared to talk about Washington State as a Pac-12 contender? I'm here to tell you that they are. They have played like one to this point. The only thing remaining is can they do it on the road? Fair question. That's a fair question to ask. Can they do it on the road? Are they really that good? But let's throw out the name Washington State, who have never been to a conference championship game before in their program's history. Let's throw out the name, get rid of it, and let's do a blind resume. And let me just say this to you. Week 1, G5 opponent on the road, won by 26. They put up half 100. Week 2, they dominated a preseason top 20 program out of the Big Ten. Week 3, they drew up an FCS opponent as a good team should. And week 4, they are in control from the opening drive against a preseason top 20, currently top 15 team. And they led by 17 points in the fourth quarter and put up 38 on a team that had one of the best defenses in the conference last year. If I just read you those stats and those realities, you'd say, wow, that sounds like a really good football team. That sounds like a contender in the pack. That's what they are right now. That's Washington State. They get a chance to prove it next week against UCLA down at the Rose Bowl. Actually, they're off next week before they go play that football game. So going into the bye, Washington State better be ranked inside the top 15, or I'm going to throw a fit. They play UCLA on October 7th. Then they play Arizona at Oregon, at Arizona State, Stanford at Cal, host Colorado, and then go at Washington. You know what I've said about Washington State when they've come up here on the show? That if they're able to hold their own, they have one of the more favorable schedules in the pack. They don't play USC, and they don't play Utah. And among the Pac-12 contenders that I had labeled as such coming into this year, Oregon State, Oregon, Washington, Utah, USC, they play 3 of them. They just beat one of them. And they have the next 2 on the road. Sure, that's tough. At UCLA, at Oregon, at Washington, those are tough games. But listen to the rest of them. Arizona at home. They won that game on the road last year. Arizona just scraped by Stanford. What in the world happened, Wildcats? Goodness gracious, I believed in you, and they let me down. At Oregon, that's going to be a tough game. I've seen Washington State win at Autzen Stadium before. At ASU, ASU's not good. Stanford at home. Stanford's not very good. At Cal, the Bears are not that good. Colorado at home, we know they have a ceiling, plus it's in Pullman. Everyone should be terrified to go to Pullman, by the way. Arizona, Stanford, Colorado are the teams that will go to Pullman the rest of the year. Good luck. Wisconsin and Oregon State were both down by many possessions against the Cougs up there, so good luck to everybody else. So between UCLA, Oregon, and Washington, Is there a world in which Washington State wins one, dare I say two, of those football games? I think there is. I think there absolutely is. I need to see UCLA next week, but boy, kind of feel like Washington State's going to go down there and get the win at the Rose Bowl. Preseason, I thought it'd be the Bruins. I've been more impressed with the Cougars so far. UCLA's defense, much improved. UCLA's offense, being held back by the quarterback position. Who could have foreseen? Few of you have been giving me a hard time about, you're too hard on UCLA. You know what my big objection has been? That the quarterback position is not going to be good enough to keep up with this conference. Dante Moore threw a pick six on his first throw. UCLA lost the game 14-7. Interesting. I'm not right about everything here on the show. I am right about some things, however. Washington State, boy, what a team. What a team. I got to talk more about the Cougs, and then I'll talk about their in-state counterpart. After I talk about FanDuel, of course, snap in action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Kick off the NFL season. You can also bet college football and fade the Pac-12 prime picks because that's apparently the best way to make money now. I'm under 500 again. Pain and suffering. FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. So, as I record the show, by the way, not all the games have wrapped up. Washington is drubbing Cal. USC is struggling with Arizona State. I suspect they'll win. If not, I'll have my lead for Monday's show. But I think the Trojans will be fine. Washington State. A school that is being left behind in realignment. A school that had Cam Ward decide to come back for another season. A school that has a head coach I like who made a fantastic offensive coordinator hire, as it appears, in Ben Arbuckle. I mean, Trent Bray literally has proven himself to be one of the top defensive coordinators in this conference. And Ben Arbuckle took him to the woodshed on Saturday. I mean, from the jump. Deep shots, ran the ball, creative, backup quarterback runs, anything and everything. Cam Ward, over 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. When Cam Ward plays like that, he's one of the best quarterbacks in this conference, which is the best quarterback conference in America. The defense stifled DJU. Oregon State ran the football. Yep, Oregon State has a tendency to do that. They run the football. And they do it well, and the Beavs did it well in this game. But guess what? They couldn't keep up. Cam Ward outplayed DJU. That was the story of the game. Cam Ward outplayed DJU by a long shot. It wasn't close. Cam Ward in this football game threw for over 400 yards. He had, wait for it, 6 incompletions. He had 4 touchdowns. He almost had as many touchdowns as incompletions in this game. He was dominant. Washington State was in control literally from the start. The Beavs were fighting, scrapping, clawing to get back into it, and Washington State didn't let them. Washington State did not let them. This was a higher scoring game than I thought. Beavs had some yards when they were down 17 in the fourth quarter, and Washington State had backed off a bit. Cougs got the win. That's what matters, and they were in control of this game. Washington State was a better football team today. They just were. So, speaking of the better football team, Washington's been way better than everybody they've played this year. And when I say way better, I mean, I don't know. I do not know if through your first 4 games, you can be as dominant as Washington has been. Now, the devil's advocate opinion here is that there is not a team at the Power 5 level that is going to finish above 500 this year on Washington's schedule. Tulsa is a very low-level G5 team. Boise State is, probably a good team in the Mountain West. You can make that critique if you'd like. But here's what I would ask you. When playing these opponents, Boise State, Tulsa out of the American, Michigan State in complete and utter disarray, and Cal coming off, a 2-1 non-conference slate in which they should have beaten an SEC opponent, how can you look more dominant than Washington has to this point? I'm asking that question. As I record this podcast, which I feel comfortable doing because I know that Cal is not going to, put up enough of a fight in this game. The score is 52-25. Penix has another 304 yards, 4 touchdowns. Washington has a pick 6 in this game. Cal not competing is not surprising. I thought they'd be able to put up enough of a fight to cover. They are not. They are not. They could slide in through the back door, but it doesn't matter. Washington is dominating this game. They had 52 points at one point in time in the third quarter. In the third quarter! This is a good defensive coach in Justin Wilcox. They've got solid personnel. And Washington was up 52-12 with 11:28 to play in the third quarter. This passing offense is insane. It's crazy. And Washington's defense is better than it's going to get credit for. They have a bunch of interceptions at Cal today. You know what you should do against the Bears? You should have a bunch of turnovers because their quarterbacks are known to do that. Well, check. Is Washington running the ball a ton? Nope. Do they need to? Nope, absolutely not. Welcome to the air raid. It's 2023. You can throw the football as much as you want. Their lowest scoring output to date was 41 points last week against Michigan State. That's the fewest they've put up. I keep thinking someone's going to be able to hang around with them. I don't know how much better they could have looked, which, by the way, leads me to the point I'm going to wrap up today's show with. This Pac-12 is just so good. Oregon, Utah, Washington State at the top. Washington up there as I just, go down the standings. USC, 3-0, going to be 4-0 probably by the time the night comes to a close. Tough times for teams at the bottom because it's just, oh man, this league is so unbelievably good. But next week, Washington goes at Arizona. They're going to win that football game. They're probably going to put up 1,000,000 yards as well. And then there's a bye, and then they play Oregon. What did Oregon just do? They thumped Colorado. I mean, that was not close, not competitive, did not belong on the same field together kind of blowout. And in week 7, coming off byes, Oregon plays at Washington. Both teams are going to be 5-0. I thought they'd be before the season. It is not a loaded lineup of games in college football as of now. The only game that could compare is USC at Notre Dame. And game day was just at Notre Dame. They better be in Seattle. Because, holy smokes, last year the Pac-12, best conference in America, which we are showing week after week as a league. Bo Nix, Michael Penix, Heisman caliber quarterbacks. Kalen DeBoer, Dan Lanning, well-known coaches who have their teams humming right now. Oregon did not look great against Texas Tech all the time, but their defense looked a lot better than last year, and that showed up against Colorado in a big way. They're playing some good football. Their starters the last 2 weeks against Colorado and Hawaii, who can throw the football, the starters for the Ducks have not allowed a touchdown. You give me that unit against Michael Penix in the best passing offense in the country with the best receivers and one of the best quarterbacks. How will that not be game day? It's the border war, big rivalry, battle of unbeatens in the pack. I mean, that place is going to be hopping, and that's got to be game day. Those are all the reactions I have now, but there will still be more thoughts. Don't worry, those will come on Monday. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time, and until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.